Deputy Tommy Broughan, you have 10 minutes.
Thanks, Catherine. I'd firstly like to commend my colleague Deputy Mary Upton for introducing the motion here to the House tonight and for highlighting the escalating crisis in the Irish travel and tourism industries. I'd also like to warmly commend her for her outstanding recent policy document on behalf of our party, which is called Extending the Welcome, Labour's Proposals to Sustain and Extend the Tourism Industry. Deputy Upton's document lays out, I think, a comprehensive, credible and innovative programme of actions to address the alarming difficulties in travel and tourism and indeed in transport, which are so important for Irish jobs. One of the key issues that Labour's motion and recent policy document highlights and addresses is the hemorrhaging of passengers and tourists coming into the country. Overseas visitors into Ireland have dropped by 1 million, or 11.6% in 2009, and report after report on passenger numbers in the aviation sectors are equally grim. I have one of the latest reports in front of me now, which shows that the level of seats, airline seats available this very month coming into the country is down by, I think, around 1 million or so on a similar period a year ago. In an earlier Dáil debate on the matter in March, I highlighted the declining passenger volumes between Ireland and our closest neighbour and most important tourism market, the UK. Between February 2009 and February 2010, there was a 700,000 decline in air passengers between the two countries. There was an astonishing 54% decline in traffic at a number of smaller airports, for example, on the Kerry to Stansted route in that period. But if these trends in passenger numbers continue throughout 2010, it's been estimated that air traffic between Ireland and the UK will hit its lowest levels since 1999. Less passengers coming through our airports and buying seats in Irish airlines puts jobs at risk, not just at the airlines and airports themselves, but across the wider economy and throughout Irish tourism. I represent Northside Dublin constituency, and the airport, Dublin Airport, is probably the most critical economic dynamo for the whole north and west side of Dublin, as well, of course, as for the Mid-Leinster region. Shannon Airport performs a similar role for the Midwest, as you know well, Catherine, as does Cork for Cork and South Munster, and indeed the regional airports in Galway, Waterford, Kerry, Ireland West, Sligo and Donegal. They have similar functions in their hinterlands. The 1,200 SRT job losses at Dublin Airport last year have been accompanied by significant job losses at Ryanair and the DAA also. In November, for example, Ryanair announced it was to axe 150 jobs at Shannon Airport because 17 routes were being cancelled. It's unclear, of course, how many jobs in total have been lost at Ryanair over the past 18 months, but on my own estimation, it's now over 500. A catastrophic loss of jobs, and of course, if you like, a big consequence for our tourist industry as well. A few days ago, of course, Aer Lingus made the appalling decision, without reference to its board, I understand, to cut its winter schedule for direct flights between New York, Chicago and Boston and Shannon, with a consequent serious impact on the Midwest tourism and business. Airports such as Dublin, Shannon or Cork also support thousands, of course, of lower skilled but highly valuable and quality jobs, including drivers, cleaners, canteen staff, maintenance workers, administration staff and so on. A very similar profile as you might see in similar jobs throughout the whole tourist industry. There was an alarming report this week, I think, in the Financial Times, Catherine, on the rising unemployment rate by job type in the UK. It's clear from the analysis that the UK government has to hand, which we don't have to hand, as I understand it, Minister, that this report stressed in the UK that low and middle income earners, especially sales assistants, office workers, van drivers, cleaners, are bearing the brunt of the economic downturn. Workers in these vital lower skilled jobs in transport and tourism are being disproportionately hammered by job losses, and it's about those workers, I think, that we are expressing most concern tonight. Since the travel tax was introduced by the Ministers of Finance and Transport on behalf of the Labour Party, I've consistently opposed it and asked the government to publish the cost-benefit analysis that was drawn up before its implementation. Only a few days ago, Minister Lenihan sent me another short PQ refusing to give me any numbers, any cost-benefit, which I think is, very not the way to manage taxation policy. The only economic analysis provided by the government in Budget 09 vaguely estimated that the travel tax would yield 95 million in 09 and 150 million in a full year. But there was no estimation of its costs on passenger numbers, aviation jobs and employment in the tourism and hotel industry sectors. I believe that even a cursory cost-benefit analysis, such as I did myself during that budget, on the tax would make clear that the cost of it would be definitely far higher than its yield. And I'd again urge the two ministers to place a full cost-benefit of the tax tax before the Oireachtas. In fact, it's astonishing that the travel tax is the one issue that has strongly united Aer Lingus, Ryanair and CityJet, which account, of course, for about 83% of the total number of passengers who leave Ireland and come here each year. A report for the three airlines by Amsterdam Aviation Economics concluded that the introduction of the air travel tax will cause estimated revenue losses of up to €482 million, that it will lead to 3,000 direct job losses and thousands of ancillary job losses, and that in the full year of operation it's causing a reduction of up to 1.2 million of the Irish aviation industry's number of departing passenger. And this balances, Minister, against a net contribution to the Exchequer of just 116 million. I just want to quote very briefly from that report, and I quote, "If airline capacity in 2009 had been maintained at 08 levels and the air travel tax was to be passed on in full to passengers in the form of higher fares, it's estimated that the total resulting demand reduction would be between 0.5 and 1.2 million departing passengers over the first full year, based on a price elasticity range of between -0.5 and -1.5. On this basis, air travel tax revenue would be between 117 million and 124 million, which is pretty accurate. But total revenue losses for airlines, airports and the tourist sector would range from a minimum of 210 million up to 486 million, dependent on the elasticities assumed." So it's a ludicrous tax, Minister, which is damaging our transport economy, it's damaging our tourism. And as my colleague has said, of course, Netherlands had experience, like Spain, like Belgium, of introducing a similar tax and then withdrawing it. Of course, I've said many times, Cathaoirleach, that the airlines themselves should get their own house in order too, and address at times a pervasive rip-off culture across that industry, which sometimes damages the numbers of passengers coming here. Low-cost tickets, for example, on sale at all airlines are often accompanied by a range of extra and unjustified charges on basic passenger services, including using the check-in desk, boarding cards, baggage, insurance, seating arrangements, and carrying a duty-free bag onto the flight. For example, air passengers were fleeced yet again when in April Ryanair proposed an increased charge in the cost of checking in baggage from €15 to €20 for the summer months. Under EU law also, air passengers have the right to either reimbursement or rerouting of a cancelled flight, the right to information and the right to care, accommodation, food, etc. as appropriate. It's often very difficult for passengers who have been affected in this way to access a reimbursement, as we saw recently in the volcano crisis. And of course, the Icelandic volcano Eyjafjallajökull eruption couldn't have occurred at a worse time for Irish airlines and for our tourist industry. The volcanic ash emergency has cost the air travel sector an estimated 2.5 billion in total, and I'm not sure about the exact figures on the tourism industry, but overall it's been quite damaging. But during the whole of the volcanic ash crisis, the overriding concern of the Labour Party and myself was the safety, of course, of all air passengers and aviation workers. And I understand the Minister Dempsey was relying on information from the UK Met Office's Volcanic Ash Advisory Centre. You might remember, Cathaoirleach, we had a couple of debates in the House on the whole issue. Yet very early on, many people were critical of the sluggish response of the government and governments across the EU to the crisis. I was given some information, for example, by people like Captain Evan Cullen, the head of our IALPA, our Airline Pilots Union, who indicated that in different other parts of the world, very frequent, which are, have frequent volcanic activity, you didn't have this complete close down of the aviation industry. So it does seem to me that the government should consider establishing an Irish expert unit, perhaps in the Department of Transport, or use the expertise in one of our university departments to monitor and assess the impact of volcanic ash. I know European Commission President Barroso and Transport Commissioner Sim Callas indicated in the midst of the crisis that an initiative would be developed at EU level to support airlines similar to what occurred after 9/11. I know that the government, though, hasn't changed its mind, I think, on this initiative, which they initially seemed to oppose. Thanks, Cathaoirleach. Well, the loss of strategic aviation connectivity is was one of the most disturbing potential implications of the so-called Project Greenfield plan by Aer Lingus, and the recent reopening of 4 key routes between Shannon and British airports was a very welcome development. But Shannon has been particularly hard hit in terms of declining connectivity, especially in terms of its US links, as it's lost key Aer Lingus and US carrier connections. That's why I've asked the Oireachtas Transport Committee to urge the Transport and Enterprise Department investments to prioritise the development of enterprise supports for Shannon and the Midwest region. So in conclusion, Cathaoirleach, I want to warmly commend my colleague for her outstanding proposals in relation to revitalising Irish tourism, and for her motion here this evening, which is so important to tens of thousands of Irish workers, and to ask the government on the transport side of the area, the one thing that they might do is to look very seriously over the next 5 or 6 months at the air travel tax. Thanks, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you, Deputy Broughan. Deputy Creevy.